10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast, episode 502. Hey everybody, as always, before we dive into the episode, just wanted to remind you all of these episodes are available as YouTube videos on my YouTube channel. So just go on YouTube and search for my name, Nick Maynella. It should be the latest video on the channel. So if you want to see any of these examples that I'm talking about, I always put them on screen and there are always other visual aids for you. Also, all of the stuff that we talk about in these episodes is always available as PDFs with backing tracks, trading tracks, all kinds of good stuff over on our site, Jazz School. Sign up to support the show with a small monthly donation, and you get everything we talk about in a ready-made package so you can start practicing right away. If you want to know more about that, just click the link in the description, and it will take you over to Jazz School. You get signed up, and then you can decide whether you want to support the channel or not. All right, let's get on to the episode. So today we're going to talk about one of the most often discussed and really valuable things to work on when it comes to improvising, but one that I think a lot of people get stuck on because they're convinced that it can't sound good, and that's chord tone soloing, or generally just working on chord tones. This can feel so limiting, but I'm a firm believer that if you think about this in the right way and you realize something about chord tones, you could play really convincing, beautiful solos with nothing but 1, 3, 5, and 7. All right, so here's the reason that I think most chord tone solos and exercises sound kind of lame, is first of all, we always play up the chord tones. And this is a perfectly acceptable thing to work on. Playing up chord tones is awesome. But most people will do something like this. And again, there's nothing really wrong with that, but if that's all you do with chord tones, that presents some real issues. First of all, we just always hear them going up, and that's kind of the way that we get used to them, we learn them, and ultimately when we're trying to use them to solo, we just do that, we play up. The second thing is, when I play chord tones like that exact way that I just played them, 1, 3, 5, 7, and then stop, there's another issue, and that is that the only interval that's present are thirds. And the thing about intervals is that we want a variety of intervals in our playing. Otherwise, it just gets like super monotonous. So if I were to solo just using 1, 3, 5, and 7, just kind of going up and down, it sounds cool, like for a couple of measures, but then all of a sudden our ears are just begging for a different interval than a third. So let's rethink our chord tone exercises and discover some things that can really lead to being able to play multiple choruses with just chord tones. Okay, so the first one is let's go down the chord tones instead of up. We could still start on the root because I know it's much harder to start on other chord tones and you'll get there eventually, but we could still start on the root and make this stuff sound much better. And actually just by starting on the root but going down the chord tones, we actually eliminate that second problem of only playing the interval of major and minor thirds. Because if we start on the root and we go down, the first interval that we hear is a second. Already, it, in my ears, is so much more pleasing, just simply because we've broken that string of thirds. And it's so interesting how just like one other interval, that interval of a second, makes it sound so much more fresh. All right, so there's sort of the first way, and I think the easiest way to make chord tones just sound a lot better. But there are so many ways that we can do this if we just make sure that we have a second in there. So even if we wanted to take our original chord tone exercise, all we have to do is add one extra note. So just cross that octave line, and instead of playing 1 3 5 7, play 1 3 5 7 1. It changes the whole sound of it. And on a tune like All the Things You Are, it's great because there's generally only one chord per bar, so we can get away with that all the way through. So your first job this week is to, whatever tune you're working on, play chord tones, but reimagine them. Every chord tone pattern that you play, every way you approach chord tones, it has to contain 1 and 7 right next to each other. And I think that alone will really, really reignite your interest and ability to make chord tones sound good. Because if I'm free with that, if I understand that chord tones don't stop at the 7, that's not the top of the mountain, I can keep going, then all of a sudden my chord tone solos, they just take on a whole different light. Now, there's something else to notice about that space from 1 to 7. There's these things called guide tones, especially when a piece of music is moving around the circle of fourths, just like All the Things You Are does. And what generally happens when something is moving around the circle of fourths? Sevenths voice lead perfectly to thirds and vice versa. So by understanding that 1 to 7, so much of the time you're going to find the third of the next chord in a really, really beautiful and melodic way. And these almost become like scale fragments. They almost sound like scales, even though we're just using chord tones. I have these little 3-note scale fragments that if I really, really understand the transition point from chord to chord and I can really hear that, all of a sudden I've got these really beautiful scale fragments existing within my chord tone solos. But I get these little sounds of these 3-note melodic fragments happening. So that can be another thing that you can work on, right? Investigate and come up with exercises. Make those chord tones lead into the next chord by way of seconds, whole steps or half steps. Then all of a sudden your chord tone solos just become, you almost don't even need anything else. I mean, of course you're going to want to play other things, but you kind of don't need them. You can play many, many choruses just using chord tones, and it sounds wonderful. And there's a lot to investigate here. So your homework assignment for this week and the things that I'm going to give to everybody that's supporting the channel are going to be recordings of a couple of different chord tone exercises over All the Things You Are. Now, if you think I'm going to give you any kind of written sheet music, well, I'm not going to. We're turning over a new leaf here at the channel where if you want to learn something, you have to want to learn it bad enough to figure it out here. I'm going to give you all the tools you need to figure it out here, but that's the way you got to figure it out. So I'll have sound slice pages where you can slow things down, change the key, loop certain sections. But I want you to learn 2 chord tone exercises that really emphasize the fact that there's the interval of a second between 1 and 7. And just your friendly weekly reminder that you will learn this stuff a lot faster if you learn to sing it first. If you can sing through a whole form of these exercises, when you go to put it on your instrument, it'll move so much faster. So highly, highly suggest that if you're going to use the tools that I make for you to learn this stuff. And then the third thing I'm going to provide is that exercise that I kind of just played, right? Where we're really focusing on 1 to 7 and how does that lead to a chord tone in the next chord that's really close. And that one is going to be so melodic, and it's going to open up so many doors for you if you can sing it and play it. Your chord tone soloing will never be the same. So if you want to get all those materials so that you can study them both in the practice room and outside of the practice room, hit the link in the description. Come over to Jazz School, my online education platform, which is free, by the way. And once you're over there, you can decide whether you want to support the channel with a small monthly donation. We've got like over 120 people supporting us. Really, really appreciate that. And it keeps this channel going. It keeps up the ability for me to spend my time making these videos. So let me know if you have any questions. I will see you in the comments below this video. And here's to making our chord tone solos really, really hip from here on out. All right, let me leave you with a chorus over all the things you are using just chord tones.